It's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blank. Tonight, we review Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown and Angels in America, Parts 1 and 2. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Two on the Aisle. Good evening, I'm Charles Gross. Welcome to Two on the Aisle.
And I'm Leslie Hoban Blake. Good evening.
Angels in America.
Same year.
Yeah.
Same year, interest.
Now, this is a revival of both plays, known as Millennium. Part 1 was Millennium Approaches, Part 2 is Perestroika, and it is at the Signature Theater Company. They're played in tandem, same cast. So unlike the original production, you don't have to wait 6 months or whatever to see the second part. And I actually, through a slight accident in the booking ticket, saw the second half before I saw the first half.
I wound up doing the same thing, and it didn't matter because I had seen them before. And also, there are many of our ilk who saw the marathon and saw both shows. Right.
Well, I wouldn't have minded that.
Which is 7 hours, you know.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But you get to take a break in between, so it's not so.
There you go. Now, this essentially takes place during the early days of AIDS, and it's called the Gay Fantasia. And I think for many people, it was the quintessential gay experience play. It kind of succeeded Torch Song Trilogy,
A Normal Heart.
Yeah, and then may have been. I always thought that Love, Valor, Compassion kind of.
Well, that came long after.
Later, yes, yeah. But kind of, then succeeded Angels in America as the quintessential gay experience play. It's very politicized.
Well, Kushner is an extremely political writer.
Right.
It always has been.
Right.
So no matter what he's writing about,
and we actually will get to that a little later. But let's see how to explain the plot of this.
Of the first part?
Yeah. Well, which really ties in pretty nicely with the second.
Because it's 7 hours long, and because he's got many stories to tell.
Quite a few.
Angels is as much exposition. I mean, the first part, rather, Millennium Approaches, is as much exposition for the entire 7 hours as it is the play itself. Whoopsie daisy.
Exposition?
I haven't done that before. Well, because that's where you're introduced to all the characters who are going to be all the way through. And it is Reagan's time also. It's midway, and AIDS is already there. Everybody knows what AIDS is by this point. It's not like Normal Heart where it's the beginning.
Right, but it is, they know what it is, but it's still to an extent the beginning of it. I mean, this is when people were very scared, when AIDS was such a stigma.
But AZT exists.
Yes.
So we're 10 years along in the process.
But still, again, the way I looked at it, it's there's a certain of fear gripping the community.
Well, but I think the fear, coming from Kushner's point of view, the fear is. Okay. I don't want to try to speak for Tony Kushner. He doesn't need me to do that. Let's go back to what we were talking about, which is going to be the plot of it, which is you have several characters who are going to be introduced.
Right.
You have Pryor Walter, who is a Christian gay man who is living with a Jewish gay man named Louis Ironson, I believe is his name. Is it not Ironson? Yes, hard for me to say for some reason.
And Pryor will be the center of the show. He finds he is stricken with AIDS, which kind of causes Louis to leave him.
Yes. Well, Louis says in no uncertain terms, I can't do this.
Yes.
I can't take care of you.
And a lot of it is watching him deal with his guilt. And basically, the only way that later in the second part,
Well, let's not go to the second part. Let's stay with the first part, because I'm trying to introduce the characters, because each character has his or her own storyline, and they're all going to converge. And that's what's so brilliant about this. It's just an amazing thing. So you have Lewis and you have Pryor. That's one storyline. Then you have Roy Cohen, who's a storyline all unto himself. And Roy Cohen is a man who says, I am not gay.
Right.
Whatever else you think, I am not gay.
I just have sex with men.
I have sex with men, and I'm not gay. And it's over and over and over again. He repeats this, and that's all he does in the first.
Right. And what Roy Cohen is actually based on an actual.
Yes, there's several characters based on. I mean, Ethel Rosenberg is also based on.
Right, but that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Roy Cohen, just for those of us who did actually meet him, and I know you did, Leslie. He was a very powerful, not lawyer. At the time, not necessarily the most scrupulous person in the world. And he, as far as the play is concerned, he is best known for making sure that Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, who were spies for the Soviet Union and passed along nuclear secrets in the 50s, were executed for it.
Well, he says he did. I mean, he says that he put the pressure on the judge.
Right.
Whether that's true or not, you know, that's always up for conjecture. And I'm not trying to say anything positive about Roy Cohn, but that's a necessary
well, this is the and during the play he is visited several times by the ghost of Ethel Rosenberg.
Right. Again in the second act, though, not in the first act. I'm just trying to get the characters delineated. Okay. Then there is a Mormon family.
Yes.
We have a Mormon family, Joe Pitt and his wife.
Joe is a lawyer, and he sometimes works with Roy, or he knows Roy.
Roy is kind of interviewing him.
Roy is kind of his mentor.
Well, in the first act, Roy interviews him for a job. In the second act, he works for him.
Well, no, he doesn't. He doesn't work for Roy. He never takes the job.
Okay, but he's in many scenes with Roy in the second.
Oh yes.
Not so
well, again, you get the impression that
it's so confusing for somebody who hasn't seen this.
That Roy is Joe's mentor, and he is a Mormon, and he's married to Harper.
Roy wants to be Joe's mentor. It's not that he is, and he likes him because he's young and attractive, and doesn't know for sure whether he's gay or not. And the thing about Joe is that he's closeted.
Yes.
He wouldn't be, as a Mormon, he could never
Which is
admit
driving
it.
his wife Harper crazy.
Yes, and Harper is
almost literally.
Talking about women on the verge, Harper is on the verge.
And Valium.
And beyond. And Valium. On the verge and
beyond. Boy, Valium was a popular
yes,
plot device in those days.
In the 80s, right. There was also a movie I remember somebody said, anybody got a Valium? And 25 people pulled out a Valium. So getting back to this,
we
though.
We have to move on because we're getting low on time.
The acting in this is absolutely superb. The three characters who are everybody except for two characters play a lot of different characters. Robin Bartlett.
Bartlett plays
the roles that were
of
played.
The Mormon mother, of Joe Pitt's mother. So she's and quote unquote the only mean Mormon.
Yeah, but she plays the mother. She also plays. She
plays Roy Cohn's doctor. She plays a rabbi. She plays a Bolshevik.
She plays men and she plays women and she plays.
Which is traditional in
Ethel
the play.
Rosenberg.
Yes,
which is the big part of that.
But you know what? We're taking a little too much time introducing this. So basically, it's this mishmash, basically centering around Pryor, who has AIDS, and how he is dealing with it, and how it all comes together. Roy Cohn also has AIDS, and there's also there's a nurse.
The nurse is in the hospital.
And that is who is that?
That's Belize, played by Billy Porter.
Okay.
And Belize was somebody who knew both Lewis and Pryor. And
so it's basically Pryor is trying to deal with AIDS. Roy is trying to deal with AIDS.
And keeping it from the public.
And keeping it from the public, and the fact that he is being prosecuted, and they're trying to disbar him.
That's very important.
So it's interesting to watch how he deals with it, how Pryor has to deal with it.
Joe has to deal with his homosexuality.
Right, and Joe ends up hooking up with Lewis.
Yes, very intriguing.
Very intriguing. And Joe basically, and at the end an angel shows up.
Well, at the end of Act 1, the angel arrives.
At the end of the first play.
The first play.
The angel arrives. And when I first saw the play, I could just see "to be continued," and it's basically in the second play. We haven't even gotten to the second play,
which is called Perestroika, but we've already talked about the second play.
So essentially, then it's we find out, and I guess Tony Kirshner's got this thing in for heaven because it turns out that God left at about the time of the San Francisco earthquake, and no one up in heaven knows really what to do. And
there are all sorts of angels. There's a whole angel.
There's a whole angel council
cadre, if you will.
And they're basically saying mankind is advancing too far, and the only way to do it is to stop, which is a little ridiculous, I think.
Well, if you believe that, yes, I guess so.
Well, I think Tony can be very self-centered. In fact, he says that the character most like him in the play is Lewis. And he says he's thinking, well, the San Francisco earthquake, obviously San Francisco, large gay population, and that because, the impression...
Not 1903.
Well, who knows?
I don't think so.
But basically God has just walked away, and that's his. And he at one point he has Pryor wrestling with the angel the way Jacob did.
Well, what would you say is the point of perestroika, though? I mean, we talked about.
I think number one, because Tony wanted to introduce what he considers the most despicable character ever, gay Republicans. He created a new villain because it was picked up on in American Daughter by Wendy Wasserstein.
Yeah.
The villain there was also a gay Republican, and I honestly thought we were going to have a whole new trend of gay Republicans. I think he is really trying. I think he's in the second act. He's getting a little more political. He is, I think, trying to show. The interesting thing is he's really knocking the Reagan era a lot, but then at the end, which I think takes place 5 years later, you know, Pryor is not better, but he's living. Wait.
Explain how that happens, though.
I don't know how it
happens. Yes, we do.
How does it happen? How does it live?
Belize steals Roy Cohen's AZT.
Oh, okay.
And so Pryor is saved. Originally, only people as rich as Roy would have had access to that kind of drug.
Well, actually, Roy gives him a few, but...
No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
When Roy dies, and they're running away from the hospital
No, they run away a little... I think that happens a little sooner before Roy dies. You know what? Doesn't matter. And I don't know if it's the AZT, because AZT didn't turn out to be a great drug. So
but at the time, it was the only drug.
Yes,
and that's the whole point.
Whether that would have...
By the way,
I don't think so. I think he just is kept alive.
The second play has been so rewritten. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
It has been, and I think it's better for it. But there are two questions that I would have. All right, it is, and this is when Lewis goes after Pryor, because he's a gay Republican.
A Pryor?
Not Pryor, I'm sorry.
Roy Cohen?
No, Pitt.
Joe Pitt.
Joe
okay.
Pitt,
all right.
Right. And a couple of things that we left out was that
I don't doubt it.
His wife goes on these trips. You find her in the North Pole. You find her in heaven.
They're mental trips.
Right.
They're not.
But and she sometimes runs into Pryor and one or two other people.
Yes.
People there, and it's interesting how she. One thing that I find very different is that I think in the original she gives them all her Valium. At the end, she gives her husband, and here she only gives him one. And she's keeping the rest
remember that
when she's leaving. But how it all comes together and how you have all the stories, and I think he does capture the panic in the gay community at the time.
Without question.
But what I was going to say before, and these are two things that I would question the playwright on, because at the end of the play, you know, Pryor is basically saying, you know, Glasnost, you know, the ending of the Berlin Wall, etc. And these were all things brought about by the same Reagan administration that Kirshner despises for the whole play, which I find very interesting. Well, Pryor is basically, at the end, Pryor is saying, oh, it's, you know, Glasnost.
Are you talking at the end of Perestroika?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
You know,
but if it's 5 years later, is it still?
With the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
Well, then it was Bush. If it wasn't Reagan, it was
Bush 1, not Bush 2, though.
Yes.
Bush 1 is not as hated as Bush 2.
That's true, but the bottom line is it was the mechanisms that the Reagan administration put into place that caused this revolution in Russia. And then he does something that didn't surprise me, but another thing I would question. He is very pro-Palestinian. He's Jewish, but he's very anti-Israel. So at the end he puts in this thing as well. Yes, there should be a Jewish state, but there should also be, you know, a Palestinian state. I think at the 67 borders. Now I was in Israel 2 years ago, and they had a gay pride parade right in the middle of Jerusalem. And they marched and nothing happened. But if you were to do that in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, in Gaza, which is now controlled by the Palestinians.
Or had you done it in 1988 in Israel, it wouldn't have been allowed either.
It wouldn't have been allowed, but you wouldn't have been stoned.
Well,
it is allowed.
Stoning is not a particularly Israeli thing.
It is allowed now, though. And this was something that was not in the play in 1988. This is something he added for this production. So what I'm asking is, how, as someone who is such a proprietor of gay rights, actively campaigning for a state where there would be no gay rights, against a state that allows them?
I think you really ought to take that up with Mr. Kushner. I would love to say a word about the actors in this play, though, if we could, if there's time. I don't know. Because Zachary Quinto, who played Spock in the new Star Trek, came either back to or to Broadway to play Louis Ironson, which was originally...
That was Spock?
That was Spock. The young Spock, yes. And that was played originally
I would not have recognized
by
that.
someone I've mentioned on this show several times before, and that is Joe Mantello, the man who is now going to come back and do Normal Heart. And I had a problem with the man playing Roy Cohn in this particular version, who is not Jewish. And I don't think anybody who's played him except for the original show has ever been Jewish. I know Al Pacino did a wonderful job in the movie, and the original, I can't recall his name now, but the fellow on Broadway was Jewish. I don't know whether that matters or not, but I didn't find Frank Wood convincing. Ron Liebman, thank you, that's who I was looking for. Frank Wood was not convincing to me as Roy Cohn, but Zoe Kazan was wonderful as the wife, as Harper. And
she was excellent. We saw her last year, I think, in the Hand.
Handless in Seattle.
Yes, no.
What was that called?
I don't know what it was called.
The play with...
Yes, with Christopher Walken.
Yes, the Christopher Walken.
It was not Handless in Seattle.
Whatever it was called then.
Yes.
Sorry. Well, we could look it up. You know, we do have a program
I think we see our show, so we got to wrap this up real quickly. Bottom line is, of the two, I think the first one is the better play, but I did like Perestroika much better this time around.
I did too. I liked it better this time.
Warning, there is full frontal male nudity in both plays, and in Perestroika, one of the women go topless briefly.
And it has been extended for 5 more weeks.
And it has been extended.
With cast changes.
So, highly recommended.